What up, everybody? Welcome again to the Built Different podcast. My name is Ricky Alphonse, CEO and founder of Extropian, joined again by the usual cast of suspects, Sean, my boy Raul from Agora Media, and Justin Kim with Extropian as well. So we'd like to welcome you guys again. Again, shout out to Leonard Jackson, Elementals Music, with the opening there. You can find his information in the in the subject matter of the title and YouTube and on Instagram. So give him a follow, check out his music. And with that being said, Raul, you want to kick us off with today's subject?
Yeah, absolutely. So today we have a really cool subject for you. It's a very important part of sports. It can be a dangerous part of sports, but it's something that's worth talking about, and that's concussions. So concussions is something that I'm not the hyper athlete of tomorrow. I used to do wrestling in high school and that sort of thing. Not really heavy impact in that same way. So concussions weren't necessarily a danger to my sports life back in the day, but I do know that it's a huge part of a lot of sports. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit and maybe learn a little bit from you guys on this subject matter. And I guess the first question, and this is to all you guys, Justin, Ricky, and Sean, what is a concussion? For those of us in the room who might not really know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and I think I'll deviate to Sean here on this one. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, that's a great question, Raul. A concussion is a form of TBI, traumatic brain injury. It occurs when your head gets hit or hits something, and it basically occurs with the brain kind of rattling and hitting up against the sides of your skull. It is not fun. I've had some. Do not recommend it to friends at all. And yeah, it's definitely a scary thing, and it's something that is a little bit scary because there's still a lot of unknowns with it. It's not, there's other injuries that you can get, whether it's, a broken bone or, a ligament tear. Those are very bad injuries, and those can hold you out of sports or even life activities for months at a time, but they have surgeries and processes for how to heal those. The most dangerous thing about concussions is that every single one of them is different, and that they affect you differently, and there's still no definitive or set way to treat it besides rest and letting your brain have time to recover.
I was going to add to that as well. Another scary facet of it is, CTE. When somebody develops CTE, you basically have to unfortunately wait for that individual to die to, have access, obviously, to the brain to really get in there and see, the amount of trauma that somebody, received. So that's another scary facet of it. Like Sean's saying, there's, not like, typical injuries where you're able to assess it and get an image of it and perform some type of procedure.
Yeah, I've never had a concussion. I have gotten hit in the head. I used to do like kickboxing, so I haven't had a concussion, but I've had trauma to the head before. But I do. My dad is a neurologist, and so he actually does see people that have had concussions or people that have CTE, and he's told me about like the symptoms that he sees by people that especially have CTE because he's seen football players, combat sports athletes. He's seen everything, and he tells me about like how it's like a matter of degree. Like there's different there's mild cases, and then moderate, and then severe cases, and then as you get like towards the more like severe cases, that's when like the personality starts to change a little bit. That's when memory becomes an issue, or memory loss becomes an issue. Like anger issues become really common. And yeah, it's pretty interesting to see how that sort of damage sort of like accumulates the more you become exposed to that sort of trauma.
Wow, yeah. And just going back to something that Sean said, that doesn't sound fun at all. Do you guys know if it hurts or how much it hurts? Like, I know that there's varying degrees of it.
I defer.
Sure. I'll answer this one. So I've had 5 diagnosed concussions, which is a lot. It's definitely more than you're supposed to have. From my experience, with all 5 of them, none of them hurt the same way that, getting like a broken bone hurts. Like, though, that's like a physical pain that you can feel. It's really much more. It doesn't hurt in the same way. It hurts more. It doesn't hurt at all, really, in my experiences. It's a lot more of like you feel messed up. It almost feels like if you wake up out of like a sleep, like suddenly, and you like feel like disoriented, you don't know where you are, type of thing. A lot of the times you get that kind of feeling. You can feel sleepy from it. You can also feel like you're unable to fall asleep, get some like what's the term?
Like insomnia?
Insomnia, yes. And so with all 5 of my concussions, they were all different. I'll talk about each of them. The first one occurred when I was 3 or 4 years old. I was in preschool, and I tripped over a chair and hit my head. As a very, very young toddler, I don't think it's a smart idea to get traumatic brain injuries. I didn't do it by choice, obviously. But that one actually, I don't really remember too much of it, but I actually lost consciousness, and it led to a seizure. So I was flown to the hospital in a helicopter as a 3-year-old. So that was a fun experience, I guess. I don't remember it, but it sounds fun. And as far as I know, there was no long-lasting impacts from that one. I recovered fine, went back to normal life. Second one didn't occur until about 13 or 14 years later, when I was a senior in high school. I was skiing, and I crashed into some ice, and that one, I had some other injuries in addition to the concussion. I had a fractured orbital, which is your eye socket, fractured jaw, and I broke my cheekbone. Even though I had all those injuries, the concussion that I got from that one was extremely minor. I lost consciousness briefly, but when I woke up, I was fully aware of my surroundings. I was trying to actually crack jokes, which the ski patrol person did not think were funny. And I didn't have any of the major concussion symptoms. I didn't have any headaches. I didn't have any tiredness or anything like that. I was very asymptomatic with regards to the concussion, but due to the significant impact that I took to the head, they said that it was very, very, very likely that I got a concussion from that, and I would agree. Concussion number 3 was about a month or a month and a half after that. I was playing high school volleyball, and I had a ball spiked into my head. It was, after it hit my head, it was a perfect pass. Unfortunately, my teammates let it hit the ground. I was not happy about that. But it was that one. I did finish playing the rest of that game. Also, not a good idea. When you do get a concussion, the number one thing you should do is not finish the rest of whatever you're doing. But at the time, adrenaline and competitiveness kind of took over. On the bus ride home, I felt extremely tired. I had a headache, and the headache persisted pretty much for like months. I had a lot of time where I wasn't feeling right, where I felt like off, and I had to miss some significant school time for that, and that one that one definitely affected me more than the first two like from a actual remembering, like needing time to recover from it. And part of the reason the doctor said that was the case was because of how quickly it was after the second one, which is part of the idea of second impact syndrome. Maybe not directly second impact syndrome because there was a month in between, but your brain, even when you are good enough to go back to classes or go back to your daily work life, just because you're back in those situations does not mean you're fully recovered from a concussion yet. Your brain is still recovering even though you might feel fine. Concussion number 4 was sophomore year of college. So I made it through freshman year with no problems. Sophomore year, I was playing basketball and got elbowed in the back of the head. I missed about a week of school for that one. I had a headache. I had probably some sensitivity to loud noises and light. I didn't feel right, but I was able to come back after about a week and finish up the semester, take finals without any real issues. I felt pretty fine after that. A little bit of recovery for that one was all it felt like I needed. And then about a month and a half after that one, I was playing soccer and a ball hit me in the side of the head. And that one was bad enough that I missed about a month worth of school. I had to redo that semester. And I had symptoms from that one. Not feeling right was, I think, the biggest symptom that I had from that one. Looking at screens caused me to have a headache. And that one really took probably three or 4 months to fully recover from. So yeah, I mean, all 4 of those were very different. Both of the ones that were shortly after another one definitely took more of an impact to me personally. Some people ask, do you feel like you have any like long-lasting symptoms from the concussions? I'm very lucky that I don't feel like I am at all limited from those. One minor thing is I have sensitivity to light. If I go outside, I typically am wearing sunglasses. But other than that, I don't have too much issues with regards to like any mental limitations or anything like that. So they're definitely dangerous. Definitely something that is not to be taken lightly. Consulting with doctors is a very, very good idea. And, even getting a second opinion sometimes is also a good idea. Just because one doctor says, "Oh, you're good," doesn't mean that that you are. So it was, scary situations, but ultimately, I'm blessed that I'm okay and that I'm here. But yeah, that's my experience with the concussions, and it's a little rough, but it's I've learned a lot from it. So
What's so interesting is that all of those stories were completely different. Like like you guys said earlier, where there's different variances to the intensity of it, how you can get it, how you react to it. And it's a lot of the sports that you mentioned are a lot of those sort of And, you weren't even playing a sport for one of them. You're just kind of walking around, being an innocent toddler. So it's something that we
And
should all know about, right?
and another thing too that their doctors are becoming more aware of is the once you get concussions, it's easier to get another one. So the same way that, Justin did kickboxing, he was probably kicked in the head before. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you were so good that they couldn't hit you.
He was too good. He
Um,
was too strong, too fast.
but um, him not having any concussions is a good thing because it means that he's less likely than if I were to do kickboxing. One kick to the head would probably be concussion number 6. So that is why I'm not doing kickboxing ever. Um, so yeah, that's another big thing is, your susceptibility to getting another one rises with every one that you get. So that's why there's a lot of times where you see someone either has 0 or they have like 3 or 4 or 5 because it just like it stacks on so quickly and you're like all of a sudden it's like something so simple as a soccer ball, which like people head soccer balls all the time and don't get concussions. A ball hit me in the head and it didn't even like really nail it, like skimmed off my head. And that was how I got the 5th one. So that's one of the scarier parts is, like the more that you've experienced concussions, the more likely you are to get another one. And getting another one when you already had a couple can be a very, very serious issue.
I was gonna say too, you were lucky with the one at a young age too, because you're you know 3 or 4, you're not you don't I think by that point your skull is mainly formed, but I'm wondering like how much more susceptible you could have been to like really having some traumatic issues later on in life. I think that's the one you really lucked out with.
Yeah, the developmental part of it, obviously when you're young,
Hmm.
the younger you are, your brain's not fully developed. I mean, your brain doesn't fully develop, I think, until like teenage years or maybe even
I believe so. I
like
believe so.
um so yeah, if not older than that, maybe even some people I feel like still are developing their brain a little bit into their 20s. Um so I think that's the scary part too is you don't want to be in a situation where you're so young and you're starting to already rack them up like crazy because it can slow or even for some people stop that development process entirely and your brain can never fully develop if you have too many TBI.
Yeah.
Think you
Um,
Yeah.
second impact syndrome twice, you said? Like, you had a concussion like pretty soon after you already had one?
yeah, both of the times that I don't know if it fully falls under the second impact syndrome category. I know that's pretty like it's supposed to be pretty like quick turnaround for it to technically be considered second impact. But based on doctors that I've talked to and my own experiences, I do think that concussions take probably a few months, I would say, to fully recover for your brain to fully recover. So if you get one within a month or 2 months of having the first one, I do think that one will probably be significantly worse as far as the symptoms that you're going to have and the duration that you have it for. That was my experience with both of the back-to-back ones. So yeah, and I mean second impact is very scary. Um, there's pro athletes who've gotten second impact syndrome and you can see it and it's dangerous. It can end your life sometimes or even or your career or your life. With your life being obviously the more deadly, somber part of that. So yeah, it's very scary and very serious. Something that people I feel like do need to know about.
Mhm. From a hopeful perspective, though, there is a lot of work being put in to that research. Like you said, with doctors understanding it more, they're getting higher quality research from all kinds of different sources, and we're able to know a little bit more sort of about how all of this works, right? Now I know Ricky wanted to share with us sort of a study that he had seen before relating to concussions.
Yeah, what was interesting is when I first, kind of the early years of this journey with the company, with Extropian, with the product that we're developing, I went to it was a neuroscientist, it was like an expo, um, one of the bigger ones where, some of the top neurocognitive experts around the world fly in and they have different workshops and they have, different, different talks about the different areas of the brain and studies of the brain and, you know, just every different topic you could think of regarding neuroscience. But I went to that expo and I was lucky enough to meet quite a few of the top guys, and I shared with them what we were working on, and they actually thought that we were filling a gap with some of the information that they weren't able to collect. Um, because a lot of times like Sean and his situation, I'm sure he wasn't wearing something that would measure the force of that impact, or
I was
maybe
not.
some of his maybe some of the things that were happening to him biometrically when those impacts occurred. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I got some thumbs up from some really highly respected people. Even one individual who was I'd love to get on this podcast, and hopefully we can maybe get him or somebody else to speak on this subject a little further. But what I did after that point was I actually, there's the fighter study that's occurring in Las Vegas. It's been going for a couple of years now via the Cleveland Clinic, the Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health. But I actually reached out to them, and what they've been doing is getting data from the fighters. So they take baseline data from them, give them like a cognitive exam, and then they test them after their fight to see, how they graded versus the baseline. And I asked them, what would you guys think? How would it help you guys to have the actual data that happens during the impacts? Because one of the things that I think is very interesting is the different paths. The unfortunate path of Muhammad Ali and the symptoms he developed after fighting versus George Foreman. And George Foreman, had so many grandkids. He had so many business ventures. He was able to, kind of have a very different life than what the late great Muhammad Ali had. What's the difference there? I think having that real time data and having that feedback would be important. And the individuals I spoke to at the Lou Ruvo Center, they agreed with that. So something that we're looking into possibly doing in the future. The versatility of our device, I believe, allows us to do things of that nature. And there's been some research done with some of the engineers we've been working on the head impact. So, it's I've transitioned from kind of focusing on that to what we're doing now, but it's something in the back of our minds in the area we'd love to help. Because at the end of the day, it's all about having a healthier, and not only about your performance, but having a healthier, safer athlete down the road as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's sort of like a holistic package to be able to help the fighter not only get better, but also prevent injury, prevent that sort of base
Yeah,
worst case
and
scenario.
and one thing I want to get across is that we're not here to really change the sport from that aspect. What I mean, guys and girls. That's kind of the purpose of fighting is to basically take out your opponent by any means necessary. That's the sport. But it could give us a better understanding of what's occurring, and it may be able to help these athletes make a decision, and their coaching staff make a decision if need be, if that's the route they truly want to take. But it's not only speaking for on behalf of fighters. This is for everybody, every sport. For if a young Sean that at 4 years old that hit his head during in class on a chair leg. What if he was able to be monitored from there on out on at recess, and his parents would have a greater sense of security when he played other sports. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
I
for
think the
everybody and just
conversation,
bettering everybody. Hmm.
yeah, the conversation should definitely be around sort of recovery, right? And what we can do to help, combat sports stay, keep alive and healthy. That's sort of where I think the direction really goes for this conversation, and where this research actually helps.
And I think too, protecting athletes from themselves a little bit. Um, a lot of athletes, pretty much every athlete is a competitor. They don't want to come out of the game. They don't want to, quit or
They love the
make it look.
sport.
Yeah, they're doing what they love, and that's why they're doing it at such a high level. And so sometimes, there needs to be someone who has their future in mind, and like can prevent them from having serious issues down the road by making them, take the time that they need to actually recover. You don't want to rush someone back from a concussion. There's so many bad things that can happen from that. That that extra week of recovery or extra couple days of recovery can make a huge difference in your long-term career and in your life too.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject, and this is like obviously not our most like our most fun episode so far. But I want to thank Sean for like sharing his experience. I know it's like maybe hard, something that's hard to talk about, but at the end of the day, thank God you weren't. You could have been a statistic. I mean, 5 is a lot. You know what I mean? And your brain's functioning very well because you've been able to help us a lot. So thank you for that as well.
This
But yeah, it's go ahead, sir.
this past weekend, I actually met someone who had 7.
Wow.
So
He's your Bill Russell.
also also former athlete, and it's like we both agreed. We were like, once you get one, it just like comes like this. It's
They
like,
stack.
yeah. And so it's my story is pretty unique in the fact that I got all 5 concussions from different sports or activities.
Say that.
Um, and ironically, none of them are from probably the sport that is most well known for concussions, which is typically football. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's kind of funny, um, but yeah, there's plenty of other people that I've met and that I've read about that have similar stories to me, but their own spin on it, where uh, they dealt with the same thing, and it's much more common than I think people realize. So yeah, I mean, it's just about recovering and getting help when you do feel those symptoms.
Absolutely. So, Justin, Ricky, Sean, if there's anything that our viewers can sort of take away from this podcast, what would you say it is?
I think what I identified from Sean is, and I think the volleyball story was kind of the one that I took the most from because he didn't even realize anything happened. He felt everything after the fact. So I think, unless you're, in certain specific sports where you can kind of pull yourself out of it, if something doesn't feel right, or if you do take an impact to the head, and maybe it's just best to kind of sit out and, you know, get checked if it's just so hard because and this is, I guess, the area that's difficult for everybody is that, you're competitive nature kind of comes out, and you're always telling yourself you're fine, no matter what. And I mean, it could be me anybody getting in a street fight, and you're like, man, I'm tough. I was hit, but I feel fine. Sometimes you just gotta take yourself out of the game or out of whatever situation, and do get assessed, because it could be fatal. You know what I mean? To be brutally honest about it, it could be fatal. So I
We
think,
we want
mhm,
people to sort of live to compete another day, if you will.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that's the main thing I took from it was, I mean, mainly the volleyball story. Is like it doesn't seem like anything sometimes, but it could be something really huge.
Mhm.
The takeaway for me is like, especially listening to Sean's stories, that you know you may not. It's like you have like the symptoms might be like invisible to you. You might feel fine, but
Hmm.
those things are not necessarily something that you could just feel. It's like once you have like concussions, like Sean was saying, it's like they come back very, very quickly. The symptoms come back. It takes very little for the symptoms and things like that to come back, and so it's important to have as much data and information about yourself as you can to really figure out, are you actually recovered, or are you still in the process of getting through an injury like that? Because brain injuries are not something. It's not like you can put a cast on your brain or something like that. You kind of just have to let it heal, And I feel like sometimes that takes longer than most people realize, and um, it's just important to have all the resources you can to actually make sure you're back 100% and ready to keep competing in any sport.
In any sport. And I think that's my takeaway from everything that I've learned from today's conversation with you three is that this isn't just football and combat sports. Concussions is a reality. It's a human thing. Anyone with a brain is someone who needs to take care of it, right? So basically, that's kind of my takeaway, if you will, is from you guys' stories. Is more than anything is we can learn from any sport and from any story, and better every sport and every story. Um, but that's my main takeaway. Sean and Ricky, if you guys don't have anything else, we can
Yeah,
take
my
it away from here and call it a night.
yeah, my main takeaway is I think especially what Justin said, I like the idea of, any additional data that you can get, any additional feedback that might help you recognize, prevent, treat, or at least, give time to rest for any kind of brain injuries is going to be super crucial. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's the saying that I think is most fitting is better safe than sorry, because you only get one brain. You don't want to mess it up too bad. Um, so yeah, it's better to take it easy for a short period of time than have multiple issues that now you're having to take it easy for the rest of your life.
Definitely. And I would want to say as well, like, we're not done with the subject. It's a big I mean, it's a huge subject, and obviously, every day we're hearing more and more about somebody that has had a concussion. So, I think the goal at the end of the day is, Sean has quite a bit of knowledge on it. It's something I want to learn more about. Justin's dad is, an expert in it. I want to learn more, and I want to bring people on the podcast that, like Justin's dad potentially, or some of the individuals I met at this conference that can, give us a even more scientific depth to the discussion. So I wanted to say that as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for listening into this amazing conversation about concussions. We were able to listen to Sean's story, his personal story about how he was able to survive and thrive despite 5 concussions. We learned a little bit about sort of the science behind it and how we can sort of look to the future on how to potentially prevent it through research and metrics. I think that is a huge avenue for this discussion. And we'll definitely see where it goes with future conversations, interviews, and much more on the Built Different podcast. But this has been another episode in the books. Justin, Sean, and CEO and founder Ricky Alphonse. My name is Raul. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good night.